The fierce stallion refused to let anyone ride it, thrashing wildly at every attempt. Then a girl approached, leaned close, and whispered something into its ear. Instantly, the horse became calm and obedient. That horse. There's something about him, Madison murmured, her eyes fixed on the imposing black stallion pacing restlessly within the wooden corral. The annual Westridge Horse Fair in a small Montana town buzzed with life. Families, ranchers, and riders from all over the county gathered to buy, sell, and showcase their finest animals. But Madison's attention wasn't on the commotion. It was on Shadow, a horse as wild as he was powerful. Standing silently beside her, her father, Jack, watched her carefully. At just 16, Madison had earned a reputation in town for her uncanny ability to connect with horses in ways few could. While many chalked it up to her youthful enthusiasm, Jack knew better. Madison had a gift, something he'd witnessed firsthand when she transformed their family mare, Duchess, from skittish to serene. "Lucas Reed's putting that stallion up for sale, you know," Jack finally said, breaking the quiet between them. Together, they observed Shadow move with untamed energy. In the corral, Lucas, a seasoned rancher with weathered skin and a patience that seemed stretched to its limit, held the reins. Turning to the crowd, he forced a grin, his tone heavy with exasperation. "Anyone brave enough to ride this demon? Step on up," Lucas called, his voice laced with a hint of desperation. "I'll sell him to the highest bidder." The stallion had a reputation for being unmanageable, a challenge even for the most seasoned riders. Madison stood rooted, her gaze locked on Shadow. There was something in the way the horse moved, something more than rebellion. It was as if he was waiting for someone who understood him, someone who could calm the storm raging inside. Deep down, Madison felt that someone was her. Jack noticed the flicker of determination in her eyes and sighed heavily. "Madison," he began, but she had already stepped forward. "Dad, I want to try," she said firmly, her voice low but unwavering. She didn't just think she could handle it. She knew it. This wasn't the first difficult horse she had faced, but Shadow was different. He wasn't just unruly, he was a force of nature. "Are you sure about this?" Jack asked, his voice more resigned than doubtful. He already knew the answer. As her father, it was his duty to question, to ensure she was ready. But he also understood the fire that drove her. "Yes, Dad," Madison replied with quiet certainty. "I can do this." Jack studied her for a moment, pride and concern warring in his expression. Finally, he nodded. "All right. If you could handle Duchess, you might have a shot with this one." The crowd murmured as Madison approached Lucas. Some in town admired her courage, calling her the fearless young trainer. Others dismissed her as just a kid playing at horse whisperer. "Mr. Reed," Madison called out, her voice steady and respectful. "I'd like to give it a try." Lucas looked her over, disbelief etched on his face. The thought of a teenage girl taming the stallion no one else could control struck him as absurd. He let out a weary laugh. "You're serious, huh? This ain't some schoolyard pony, kid." Madison didn't flinch. "I know what I'm doing. Just give me a chance." For a moment, Lucas scrutinized her, as if trying to decide whether she was brave or just plain foolish. Then, with a grumble, he thrust the reins toward her. "Fine. Let's see what you've got." Without hesitation, Madison stepped forward. The stallion, a magnificent beast of gleaming black, snorted impatiently, tossing his head in defiance. Yet Madison exuded a calm that astonished onlookers. She understood that taming a horse like Shadow wasn't about domination. It was about trust. Every movement she made was deliberate, her breathing steady, syncing with the horses. The tension in the crowd was palpable as Madison extended her hand, holding it just inches from Shadow's muzzle. Patience, she reminded herself. Everything had its moment. She didn't rush it. Instead, she let him make the first move, to choose to approach her on his own terms. Madison's patience felt like a quiet defiance against the tense crowd gathered in absolute silence. Not a single pair of eyes in the corral looked away. Some expected Shadow to throw her to the ground in seconds, while others dared to hope for a miracle. The restless stallion sniffed Madison's outstretched hand, stepped back with a snort, and then cautiously moved forward. His massive frame was a blend of raw power and untamed rebellion, but Madison stood unwavering. With a grace that seemed to defy the charged atmosphere, she took another step closer and gently ran her hand along Shadow's neck. To everyone's astonishment, the horse didn't lash out. Madison's eyes gleamed with an almost mystical focus, as if she could peer beyond Shadow's skittish hooves and into his very soul, understanding his fears and defiance. The murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. "What is she doing?" Someone whispered. It was a technique few could comprehend. Where other trainers might have relied on brute strength or tried to dominate the horse, Madison brought something entirely different. A quiet confidence, an unshakable calm. And slowly, Shadow began to sense it. Though still on edge, the horse stopped tossing his head with the same ferocity. "Easy now, boy. Easy," Madison whispered, more to herself than to the animal. Her voice was barely audible, but Shadow seemed to catch its rhythm, relaxing ever so slightly under her touch. Every movement she made was deliberate, yet gentle, weaving an invisible thread of trust between them. When Madison finally decided to mount him, she did so without a saddle. A gasp swept through the crowd as she prepared to ride bareback, armed only with the fragile connection they had forged in mere minutes. It was a daring gesture, and whispers of doubt filled the air. "She's going to fall," one man muttered. "Or worse," another added grimly. Madison climbed onto Shadow's back with fluid ease, her body moving as if it were an extension of the horse itself. For a moment, the corral fell utterly silent. Shadow stood still, processing the unfamiliar weight on his back. But the calm didn't last. With a piercing neigh, the stallion reared onto his hind legs, thrashing wildly as though determined to throw her off. The crowd erupted in shouts. Women covered their mouths in alarm, while men leaned forward, certain that Madison was about to be hurled to the dirt. Yet Madison clung on, her hands gripping Shadow's mane tightly, her body moving in perfect harmony with his frenzied motions. "It's okay. It's okay," she murmured softly into his ear, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Her tone wasn't commanding, but understanding, as if she were speaking directly to the wounded spirit within him rather than the bucking beast. The struggle dragged on, each second feeling like an eternity. Shadow kicked, spun, and shook with relentless energy, but Madison remained firm yet calm. Gradually, the horse's movements began to lose their intensity. His neighs grew quieter, and his resistance waned. To the crowd's astonishment, Shadow finally dropped his front legs and began walking, calmly, obediently. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers, who could scarcely believe what they were seeing. Shadow, the wild horse no one could tame, now moved under Madison's silent guidance. The spectators, stunned, didn't know whether to applaud or remain silent in awe. For Madison, it wasn't a moment of triumph to be celebrated. It wasn't about conquering Shadow, but about reaching an understanding. With a faint smile and a nearly imperceptible sigh of relief, she guided Shadow back to the center of the corral. The murmurs among the crowd shifted, now filled with admiration and disbelief. As Madison led Shadow back, a reverent hush settled over the arena, broken only by whispers of awe from the onlookers. No one saw it coming. No one could believe that a young girl, armed with nothing but her steady demeanor and gentle touch, had tamed a horse so notoriously wild. The skeptical gazes that once followed her every move now brimmed with newfound respect. From a shadowed corner of the paddock, a young man stood with a camera in one hand and his phone in the other, capturing every moment. Clark, a local blogger who often roamed Westridge events in search of compelling stories for his social media channels, had stumbled upon this scene entirely by chance. What he witnessed exceeded his wildest expectations. Without hesitation, he began live streaming. "You won't believe this, folks," Clark whispered into his phone, the camera zeroed in on Madison and Shadow. "This girl's doing it, bareback, fearless, it's unreal." The video quickly gained traction. Comments poured in, praising Madison's courage and skill. Within minutes, the extraordinary feat from this small Montana town was being viewed across the country. Soon, it wasn't just national, it was global. Unaware that her actions were now on display for the world, Madison approached her father, Jack, who greeted her with a proud, warm smile. Yet, beneath his pride, lay a hint of unease. He understood that while this moment might seem like a triumph, it was only the beginning of new challenges. "You did it, kiddo," Jack said softly, patting her on the back. "I always knew you could. But now, so does everyone else." Madison returned his smile, but inside she already felt the weight of the attention. Recognition had never been her goal. For her, it had always been about the horses, about the unique, almost magical bond she shared with them. Yet, she could sense that everything was about to change. Later that evening, at the Modest Hart family ranch, Madison's phone buzzed incessantly. Notifications flooded her screen. News outlets, bloggers, and countless strangers on social media were captivated by her story. Headlines ranged from "The Miracle of Westridge" to "The Girl Who Whispers to Horses." While most praised her talent, not all comments were kind. One particular message caught Jack's eye. It was from a well-known horse trainer with years of experience and a reputation for being outspoken in the equestrian community. The trainer congratulated Madison, but raised a sharp concern. "No horse can be tamed that quickly without something unusual going on," the message read. "Either that horse was secretly trained beforehand, or the girl's methods are unsafe. This warrants a closer look." Jack's jaw tightened as he read. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, deciding to shield Madison from the criticism for now. He had expected some scrutiny, but not so soon. Success, especially the kind that arrives abruptly, often draws curious eyes and sharp tongues. In the days that followed, Madison found herself in the eye of a storm. Journalists, bloggers, and trainers reached out, some offering words of support, others pressing her with uncomfortable questions. Social media buzzed with debates over whether her achievement with Shadow was genuine talent or sheer luck. Opinions were split. Many championed her natural gift, while others cast doubt on her methods. What had begun as a proud moment at the Westridge Fair was now a heavy burden. Madison Hart was no longer just a small-town girl. Her name was on the lips of equestrians and social media users everywhere, but the admiration wasn't universal. Dr. Nathaniel Grant, a prominent figure in equine ethics, weighed in with a critical article in a widely read magazine. He acknowledged the spectacle of Madison's achievement, but questioned its ethical implications. "Training a horse, like Shadow, in such a short time is inherently risky," Grant wrote. a process that rapid leaves little room for the horse to acclimate naturally to new experiences, creating unnecessary stress that could result in long-term psychological harm. What appears to be calm and control might in reality mask coercive methods that suppress the horse's instincts in unhealthy ways. Grant's words landed like a gut punch. For Madison, whose connection with animals had always been rooted in mutual trust and respect, the accusations stung deeply. While many continued to celebrate her sensitivity and skill, some began to view her with suspicion. Social media buzzed with debates. Some praised Madison for her bond with Shadow, admiring her natural talent, while others sided with Grant, demanding she prove her methods were not only effective, but also ethical. At school, the tension was palpable. A group of students, led by Ashley, a classmate who had always been critical of Madison, circulated a petition urging her to demonstrate her training techniques live. "If she's as good as everyone says," Ashley declared loudly during lunch break, "then she should prove it here, not just in some viral video." Ashley's words cut deep. Madison wasn't the kind of person who thrived on conflict, much less someone who felt the need to validate herself to others. Training horses was a personal passion, driven by love and respect for the animals, not something she wanted to showcase to a skeptical audience. That evening, after a long day of sideways glances and whispered judgments, Madison found an envelope waiting for her at the door of her family's barn. Inside was a letter from Henry Miles, a highly respected horse trainer known nationwide for his humane and innovative methods. Henry had heard of Madison and her natural ability with animals, and his letter invited her to his ranch in Montana. "I've followed your story with interest, Madison," the letter began. "I know how challenging it is to face criticism when you truly believe in the rightness of your actions. I'd like to invite you to my ranch so you can learn some techniques I've developed over the years. Perhaps you'll find something that helps you refine your skills and address your critics with transparency and confidence." Madison read the letter in silence, feeling a mix of relief and unease. The invitation was a rare opportunity, but it also posed a significant challenge. If she accepted, she'd not only have to improve her techniques, but also confront the possibility that her methods could be enhanced. That night, Madison sat at the kitchen table with her father, Jack, and showed him the letter. "What do you think, Dad?" she asked, seeking the wisdom she'd always relied on during difficult moments. Jack looked at her, pride and concern etched into his expression. "Miles is one of the best, Madison. If anyone can teach you something new, it's him. But it's a big responsibility. Going there means accepting there might be areas where you can grow." "I know, Dad," Madison replied, nodding. "I don't mind learning more. I've always wanted to be better. But I don't want people to think I'm only doing this because they criticized me." Jack's smile was gentle but firm. "It doesn't matter what people think, sweetheart. What matters is doing what's best for the horses. If this helps you become better for them, it's worth it." With her father's words echoing in her heart, Madison made her decision. The next day, she wrote back to Henry Miles, accepting his invitation. She understood that her journey to Montana would be more than an opportunity to learn. It would be a statement to herself and her critics that she was committed to continuous growth and the well-being of the horses she loved. The trip to Montana wouldn't be easy or short. It would challenge not only her skills as a trainer, but also her ability to adapt and grow under pressure. Madison couldn't predict what awaited her at Miles's ranch. But one thing was certain: her unwavering love for horses and her dedication to doing what was right would guide her through the toughest moments. Madison arrived in Montana on a crisp morning as the sun crested the mountains. The journey had been long, but it gave her time to reflect on what lay ahead. More than ever, she realized this wasn't just about proving her abilities. It was about affirming her commitment to the horse's welfare. As she stepped off the train, the fresh, dry air enveloped her, a reminder of why she had accepted Miles's invitation. This wasn't just a training session, it was a turning point in her life. Waiting for her at the station was Henry, his warm smile radiating a calmness that immediately put Madison at ease. Medium in height, with a face weathered by years of working with horses, Henry carried himself with a quiet confidence that gave Madison a newfound sense of purpose. "Welcome, Madison," Henry said warmly as he extended his hand. "I hope the trip wasn't too exhausting." Madison managed a slight smile, her nerves still taut with anticipation. "It was a bit long," she admitted, "but I'm ready to learn." During the drive to the ranch, Henry shared his philosophy on training horses. For him, everything revolved around patience and observation. "Horses aren't just animals to be commanded," he explained, his voice steady as the truck rumbled along the dirt road. "They decide when they're ready. All we do is guide them." Henry's ranch unfolded before them, a sprawling expanse of rolling hills and open pastures. The weathered wooden stables housed horses that roamed freely in the paddocks. The tranquility of the place wrapped around Madison like a comforting blanket, and she felt deep down that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I've heard about what you accomplished with Shadow," Henry said as they climbed out of the truck. "But I'd like to see how you work, how you connect with them." Madison nodded, fully aware that this was her chance to prove that her bond with Shadow was no mere fluke, as some had suggested. Henry led her to one of the corrals, where a striking chestnut horse named Shadow moved with cautious elegance. Shadow, Henry explained, had endured a troubled past filled with mistreatment, leaving him skittish and difficult to handle. "You don't have to do anything special," Henry said, handing her a lasso. "Just show me how you approach him." Taking a deep breath, Madison stepped into the corral with the same calm she'd shown with Shadow. She didn't rush to capture Shadow or raise her voice. Instead, she let the horse notice her presence, giving him the time to sense that she posed no threat. Gradually, Shadow lowered his head, sniffing the air around her. Madison stood her ground, relaxed but unwavering. Minutes later, Shadow allowed her to gently stroke his neck. It was a small victory, but for Madison, moments of trust like these were everything. Henry watched in silence, nodding approvingly. "You've got a gift, Madison," he finally said. "But what I admire most is that you're not in a hurry. That's something too many trainers overlook." The days that followed were a whirlwind of learning. Madison refined the techniques she already knew and discovered new ways to approach horses, always prioritizing their emotional and mental well-being. Henry offered guidance, but allowed her the freedom to develop her own style, a gesture Madison deeply appreciated. However, the outside world loomed ever larger. Social media buzzed with divided opinions. Some eagerly anticipated Madison's next public demonstration, while critics, led by Dr. Grant and his followers, demanded she prove her methods more transparently. One afternoon, as Henry and Madison shared a simple meal on the ranch's porch, a phone call interrupted them. It was from an organizer of a prestigious national equestrian fair. They wanted Madison to perform a live demonstration with Shadow, the same performance they'd seen in Westridge. But this time, it would be broadcast to thousands, with a team of animal rights advocates in the audience, scrutinizing her every move. "It's a chance to clear your name," Henry said after Madison relayed the conversation. "But it's a heavy responsibility too. If you agree, you'll need to be ready for all kinds of criticism." even from people who don't understand what you're doing. Madison understood the stakes. This was about more than personal pride. It was her opportunity to show the world that horses could be trained with compassion, without fear or force. Ultimately, Madison chose to accept the challenge. She was determined to prove that her success with Shadow wasn't a trick or a fluke, but the result of years of patience, respect, and love for horses. The days leading up to the event flew by. Madison spent countless hours with Shadow, strengthening their bond and perfecting the smallest details, aware that even the tiniest misstep would be magnified under the public's watchful eye. Finally, the day of the demonstration arrived. The sun blazed brightly over the vast field of the equestrian fair as spectators settled into their seats, buzzing with anticipation. The cameras were poised, ready to capture every detail, and Madison felt the weight of countless eyes on her. Shadow, her horse, was restless, a natural reaction for an animal surrounded by the noise and chaos of a bustling crowd. Yet Madison, with her signature poise, leaned in close and whispered soothing words into his ear, her voice a steady anchor amidst the storm of commotion. As the demonstration began, tension rippled through the field. Shadow, perhaps feeling the intensity of the moment, began to shift erratically, tossing his head and showing clear signs of unease. But instead of pushing him or panicking, Madison centered herself with a deep breath, her composure unwavering. She drew upon the techniques she'd learned from Henry, giving Shadow the space and time he needed to settle. The air was thick with anticipation as silence fell over the crowd, every person riveted by the scene unfolding before them. And then, just like at Westridge, Shadow found his calm. Under Madison's gentle guidance, he moved with grace, responding seamlessly to her commands, not once needing the tug of the reins. The audience, initially holding their collective breath, erupted into thunderous applause. Among them were animal welfare advocates who had come to scrutinize her methods. At the end of the demonstration, they approached her, offering genuine praise. "Your methods are humane, respectful, and effective," one remarked. "You've shown us that there's a better way to train horses." Though drained from the day, Madison felt a profound sense of relief. She had not only defended her reputation, but had also proven to the world that equine training could be different, kinder, and rooted in respect. Yet Madison knew this was only the beginning. This success was a milestone, but her ultimate mission, to reshape the global perception of horse training, was far from over. Words alone wouldn't suffice. She needed tangible scientific evidence to support her approach. A few days after the event, Madison received an unexpected invitation. Dr. Emily Foster, a renowned animal behavior scientist, had been quietly observing Madison's work. Intrigued by Madison's ability to connect with horses and minimize their stress, Dr. Foster proposed a groundbreaking collaboration. "Madison," the letter began, "I've been following your journey since your video went viral. As a scientist, I believe it's time to rigorously evaluate the impact of your methods. I propose a joint study to measure stress levels in the horses you've trained and compare the data to more traditional approaches. Together, we can provide scientific proof that humane training isn't just possible, it's bettable. Let's work together to reshape the future of equine training." Madison read the letter several times, her heart pounding with excitement. Collaborating with someone of Dr. Foster's stature could elevate her methods from personal success to scientific breakthrough. It was a chance not only to gain credibility, but also to transform the narrative surrounding horse training. For Madison, this wasn't just an opportunity, it was a calling. She had always believed that horses should never be treated with force or fear. and now she had a chance to prove it with hard evidence. A month later, the first phase of the study began. Madison and Dr. Foster set up a temporary lab on Henry Miles's ranch, his generosity providing the perfect venue for their work. Dr. Foster arrived with an array of specialized equipment designed to measure cortisol, the hormone that indicates stress, in the horses both during and after training sessions. For weeks, Madison worked with a variety of horses, some familiar, others entirely new. Each session was meticulously monitored by Dr. Foster and her team, who collected samples and documented the horses' behaviors with precision. The study wasn't just about immediate results. It aimed to explore the long-term effects of Madison's non-invasive approach. Early findings revealed a compelling trend. The horses Madison trained consistently exhibited lower cortisol levels, a clear sign they experienced significantly less stress than those trained using conventional methods. Moreover, these horses displayed heightened trust and responsiveness toward their handlers. The data reinforced Madison's belief that emotional connection and trust were at the heart of effective training. "This is remarkable," Dr. Foster said, studying the initial results. "We're not just changing training methods, we're changing lives for both the horses and their trainers." Madison stood on the edge of a new frontier in equine training, her heart swelling with pride as she reviewed the data. "Your horses exhibit significantly lower stress levels compared to those trained using conventional methods. You're redefining how we understand the bond between humans and horses," remarked a colleague. Madison felt a sense of accomplishment, but knew there was still a long road ahead. Her next step was to present these findings to the broader equestrian community, proving that her method wasn't just ethical, but also effective in the long term. Armed with scientific backing, she decided to host a series of workshops and seminars. These events drew a wide array of participants, from seasoned trainers eager to expand their knowledge to skeptics clinging to traditional techniques. Some attended out of curiosity, others with doubt, but all wanted to witness her methods firsthand. The first workshop took place at a small equestrian center. Madison, accompanied by Dr. Foster, began with an introduction to her training philosophy. The crowd listened intently as she spoke not just about the techniques, but also about the virtues of patience, respect, and observation. "Training a horse isn't something you rush," Madison explained, pacing through the audience. "They speak to us constantly, with their movements, their eyes, their breathing. If we listen and guide them gently, they'll respond in kind." During the live demonstration, Madison worked with a nervous horse she had never encountered before. Every eye in the room was fixed on her as she calmly approached the animal, employing her method of slow, non-forceful contact and soft commands. Gradually, the horse began to relax. Within minutes, the once anxious creature was moving confidently under her guidance, stunning even the most skeptical observers. After the session, one of the more traditional trainers approached her. His arms had been crossed, his expression critical throughout the demonstration. "I wasn't convinced when I walked in here," he admitted, his voice sincere. "But what I saw today made me reconsider. I've spent years using traditional methods. But this is something else." Madison smiled humbly, fully aware of the importance of each small victory. Every workshop, every step forward was an opportunity to prove that equine training could be both humane and effective. Months later, Madison found herself far from the familiar horse arenas of her homeland. The dry, warm breeze of the African savanna brushed against her face as she gazed out at the vast expanse surrounding a conservation camp in Kenya. She never imagined her work would take her here, not to train horses, but to help rehabilitate elephants. Invited by a team of biologists and conservationists, Madison joined their effort to heal elephants traumatized by poaching and illegal hunting. These majestic giants bore deep physical and emotional scars, leaving them wary of human contact. Madison knew this would be her greatest challenge yet. Her experience with horses had taught her that respect and patience were critical, but elephants presented an entirely different set of complexities. Their size, intelligence, and intricate social structures made them much harder to reach. And unlike horses, elephants remember every wound, every loss. The weight of their pain was overwhelming. One young elephant, Echo, stood out. He had lost his mother to poachers only months earlier, and his grief was evident. He wandered nervously, isolating himself from the herd, stirring up dust with his trunk and emitting sharp, plaintive cries. "Don't worry," said John, the project's lead, a tall, wiry man with decades of experience in elephant conservation. "It takes time. These animals have endured so much. They need more than patience. They need to feel they can trust again. But it's not easy." Madison nodded, understanding the enormity of the task ahead. The first days were disheartening. Despite her gentle approach, slow movements, constant observation, and creating a sense of safety without exerting control, the elephants remained distant. It was as if their trauma had erected an invisible wall between them and the human world. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Madison sat outside her tent, frustration gnawing at her. Days had passed with little progress, and she began to doubt herself. But as she watched the twilight settle over the savannah, she reminded herself of a lesson she had learned with horses. Progress doesn't come in leaps. It comes in whispers. Madison gazed at the sky, the sun dipping below the horizon, as Henry's words echoed in her mind. "You can't rush the process. Just watch, and they'll show you when they're ready." But doubt gnawed at her. What if this time wasn't enough? What if the elephants were simply too different for her methods to succeed? John noticed her unease and suggested something unconventional. The team had been using drones to monitor the elephants from above, ensuring minimal disturbance to their natural behavior. These small flying machines provided critical insights into the animals' movements and interactions. "Why don't you study the recordings of Kibo and the others in their habitat, untouched by human presence?" John proposed. "Watch how they behave when no one is around. Sometimes the key isn't about how you approach them, but understanding what they need when you're absent." That evening, Madison spent hours poring over the footage. Kibo caught her attention, a young elephant, always on the fringes of the group, avoiding close contact with the others. His reserved demeanor suggested a lingering grief, as though he hadn't yet healed. This realization shifted Madison's perspective. Connecting with Kibo wasn't just about physical proximity, it was about respecting the emotional space he required to recover. The next day, Madison adjusted her approach. Instead of trying to get closer to Kibo, she kept her distance, giving him the choice to engage on his terms. It was a subtle shift, but over the following days, Madison noticed a change. Kibo began lingering nearer to her, no longer as withdrawn. While he still didn't seek direct interaction, his movements carried less tension, and a fragile trust seemed to be forming between them. Then, everything changed in a single, harrowing night. The camp was ambushed by armed poachers intent on harvesting ivory from the elephants. Madison was jolted awake by the crack of gunfire and urgent shouts. Heart pounding, she raced alongside John and the team, determined to protect the elephants. Chaos reigned as the animals scattered in terror, and Kibo, in his panic, became ensnared in a crude trap, a net designed to immobilize smaller elephants. Without hesitation, Madison sprinted to his side, ignoring the danger. Kibo thrashed, his trunk swinging wildly, but Madison remained steady. "I'm here, boy," she murmured, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I won't leave you." Her words mirrored the soothing tones she once used with frightened horses. As she worked to free him, John and the team drove off the poachers, their presence finally overpowering the threat. When the net was cut away, Kibo didn't bolt. Instead, he stood motionless for a moment, his eyes meeting Madison's, a silent acknowledgement of her role in his rescue. The incident drew international attention. Media outlets shared the story of Madison, the horse trainer turned elephant advocate who had risked her life in Kenya to save the majestic creatures. But for Madison, the headlines weren't the real triumph. The true victory was seeing Kibo and the other elephants slowly learning to trust again. Her patience and respect had proven once more that meaningful connections with animals transcend species. Under the blazing Montana sun, Madison stood on the grounds of the ranch she had transformed into her new home. Her vision, the Humane Animal Research and Training Institute, had become a reality. Inspired by her time in Kenya, Madison was committed to expanding her methods beyond horses and elephants. This was only the beginning. Her mission was to revolutionize humanity's relationship with animals, fostering compassion and understanding across species. Nestled among Montana's rolling green hills, the Institute provided ample space where animals could thrive. Word of Madison's success had spread, drawing the attention of behavioral experts, veterinarians, and trainers from around the globe. Her innovative work had sparked international interest, a testament to the profound impact of her methods. The grand opening of the Institute arrived quickly, the culmination of months of planning. Nervously, Madison walked through the corrals and pavilions prepared for the event. This wasn't just a celebration, it was the start of something far greater. The Institute would be a beacon of hope, showing the world that coexisting with animals could be transformative, a partnership that enriched all lives involved. "Are you ready?" Jack asked his daughter, his voice steady but his expression tender. He had arrived early to support her on such an important day, his eyes brimming with pride. He knew the journey had been anything but easy for Madison. "I am," she replied, her smile bright but tinged with nervousness, "though I can't help feeling a little jittery." She glanced toward the gathering crowd, watching as the first guests began to arrive. Scientists, trainers, and animal rights advocates mingled, eager to see the fruits of Madison's work. The ceremony began with a presentation showcasing the Institute's most remarkable projects. Madison had ensured the spotlight was shared, inviting researchers focused on rehabilitating animals rescued from circuses and zoos, as well as those studying the natural behavior of wildlife in their native habitats. Each presentation reinforced a singular message. Humanity must redefine its relationship with animals, anchoring it in respect and mutual understanding. When Madison finally stepped up to the microphone, she exuded a quiet confidence. Gazing at the audience, she spoke with conviction. "This institute isn't just a place for training animals. It's a space for education, for learning, and for challenging the outdated ideas about how we treat the living beings who share this world with us." Her voice resonated across the grounds, where horses and other animals roamed freely in open spaces, far removed from the stress and coercion often associated with traditional training centers. Guests observed in awe, captivated by the tranquil atmosphere of the institute. One of the event's highlights came during a live demonstration. Comet, a horse Madison had worked with extensively on Henry's ranch, took center stage. Once skittish and unruly, Comet now followed Madison's gentle commands with ease, the bond between them undeniable. The audience was spellbound, not just by the horse's transformation, but by the evident trust and understanding between trainer and animal. But the demonstrations didn't stop there. A group of animals rescued from the entertainment industry, including lions, tigers, and bears, was introduced. Under Madison's team's compassionate care, these once traumatized creatures had begun to trust humans again. Their positive behaviors, born of patience and respect, stood as living proof of Madison's methods. The techniques worked not just for horses or elephants, but for any species given the chance to heal in a safe, nurturing environment. As the day concluded, a distinguished ethologist from Spain, Dr. Alexander Gray, approached Madison with a warm smile. "I've traveled the world, but what you've achieved here is extraordinary," he said earnestly. "Your work marks the beginning of a new era in the bond between humans and animals." Still riding the high of the day's success, Madison replied with modesty, "Thank you. There's still so much to be done. What matters is that more people now see what's possible." Madison's Institute soon became a global beacon. Experts from around the world visited to learn and collaborate. Each seminar and workshop was a step toward transforming perspectives, shaping a new generation of trainers, veterinarians, and conservationists who understood animals not as beings to be dominated, but as partners deserving of dignity and respect. As Madison stood at the edge of her institute, looking toward the horizon, she reflected on how far she had come. She knew her work was far from finished. She had planted the seed of change, but the real transformation was just beginning. What had once been a distant dream was now flourishing, and she was committed to building a future where humans and animals could coexist in harmony, not just as a trainer, but as a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Madison's story is a powerful testament to the profound connection between humans and animals. From her early days training horses to her groundbreaking work with traumatized elephants in Kenya, her journey carries a universal message of respect, patience, and empathy. She reminds us that animals are not merely beings to be tamed, but creatures with emotions, fears, and traumas that deserve understanding and care. Through her humane, trust-based methods, Madison offers a lesson in compassion that resonates far beyond the boundaries of her institute. True power does not lie in imposing our will on those who are weaker, but in building bridges of understanding and mutual respect. Through her work, Madison reminds us that when we treat animals with love and dignity, they respond with an equal measure of kindness. This story emphasizes the profound importance of harmonious coexistence between humans and animals, reminding us that the well-being of all species is deeply interconnected. Ultimately, the greatest lesson we can draw is that respect for life, in all its forms, is the cornerstone of a more just and compassionate world. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to like and share it. Leave a comment to tell us how it inspired you, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. May God bless you and guide you in every step of your journey.